The Bling Ring is the story of a band of teenage thieves who, between 2008 and 2009, robbed the homes of a number of celebrities. The first burglary ring in the history of Hollywood to specifically target celebrities.
They probably mimic many kids in high school in America. They just look like normal kids.
They made off with more than $3 million in designer goods.
What happened with the Bling Ring could happen anywhere else in the country. It really is a Hollywood story.
It was a perfect storm of celebrity obsession, drugs, and greed.
It had teenagers, it had crime, it had social media. It was this crazy pop culture cocktail of all of these things. Why did they do it is the big question. Why do something so insane? The mainstream media wanted to paint them as rich kids. They weren't really rich. Most of them grew up in Calabasas, which is a very affluent community in the valley. And they were not the richest kids in Calabasas. They were kids with troubles. Nick Prugo was a boy who had had a lot of problems with depression, anxiety. He was friendless, he was lonely. I think Nick especially was looking for a connection. When he met Rachel Lee, that was really the turning point in his life. He told me he was in love with her in this soul-wrenching but platonic way. Rachel's a bit of an enigma. No one has ever interviewed her yet about the Bling Ring. She was called the ringleader. Nick certainly said that she was the prime mover of the group. She was a very strong-willed young woman, really into clothes. She had dreams of going to fashion design school. She had also had some family problems. She was the child of divorce, and her parents had separated, and Nick told me that she had had some problems with the new blended family. She'd been asked to leave a school because of disciplinary problems, and she also wound up at Indian Hills, the same high school where Nick Prugo went, and Diana Tamayo as well. Diana Tamayo lived in another community called Newberry Park. She was an undocumented immigrant. She was very popular and successful in Indian Hills High School. She was voted best smile. She was voted best couple with her boyfriend. She was a really successful student.
Diana Tamayo hung out with Alexis Nyers and Courtney Ames and all those girls in the Calabasas social scene.
Courtney Ames was kind of a tough girl. Her stepdad was Randy Shields, who was a former boxer. She was a girl who wore Converse sneakers and baggy shorts and baggy shirts. Alexis Nyers was a budding celebrity. She was a wannabe model, wannabe actress. She had her own reality show in the works called Pretty Wild.
Which was supposed to follow three sisters who were homeschooled in Calabasas by their new agey mom. And they were all hot. They were like going to clubs. They loved meeting celebrities. I met Alexis and Tess at the same time, and I was like, it sounds like you should have your own reality show. And then they were like, that'd be cool. We want to be famous.
What are your favorite hot spots in LA? Hot spots. So we love Lola's. We go there all the time. It's a martini bar. And I like the Dime. I like, we always go to Ledoux just because all our friends are always there.
Ledoux is a very popular nightclub in the late aughts. You know, all the stars from the Hills and all those MTV reality shows and Paris Hilton.
If you look at where the celebrities hang out every weekend and even the weeknights, it's the same nightclubs. They needed that into the clubs. They needed that into the Hollywood lifestyle, and Johnny was able to provide that for him.
Johnny Ajar was a nightclub promoter at Ledoux nightclub where they all like to hang out, all the kids in the Bling Ring. He was 27. He dated Courtney Ames. He had been in jail in Wisconsin at some point for drug trafficking.
Johnny Ajar's nickname was Johnny Dangerous. And apparently these kids, through knowing Johnny Ajar, would get you a table relatively close to some of these celebrities.
These kids were going to these restaurants and these same nightclubs as these celebrities and running into some of their possible victims. And a lot of times hanging out with the exact same people that later on they would burglarize.
Rachel Lee and Nick Prugo had been robbing people in Calabasas, according to Nick, for almost a year. They called it checking cars. They would just go around to cars in their neighborhood and see if the door was open. And very often they would find iPods and wallets and sunglasses and all kinds of things in there, and they would take them. Rachel Lee and he graduated to robbing people they knew in their community. Their very first burglary of a home was a boy that Nick knew to be away, and they went into the house, and they happened to find $8,000 in cash, and then they went shopping. They went to Kitson and different boutiques that they loved, and they had a blast, and they felt glamorous.
But then Nick Prugo does something that in the end is going to turn the case on its side, which is they steal a computer, a Mac computer, from an LA businessman.
When you get these computers, they take, screenshots of everything you're doing. They were Googling all these celebrities, and the search terms were, Paris Hilton's diamond watch.
They would see this frock on Paris Hilton or this leather jacket on Lindsay Lohan and immediately were drawn to it.
They wanted to look like celebrities and wear things that made them look good. They wanted to be able to go out to the door at certain nightclubs in LA where the celebrities were hanging out and to walk in and look, as Nick said, styled and beautiful.
That's the life that a lot of these people in the Bling Ring thought that they wanted. It was, I want to arrive at the nightclub and walk in the front door as everyone takes my picture and flash bulbs go off.
Why do kids want to live like celebrities? I mean, actually, doesn't our culture sort of promote that idea? We have now something that we never had before, which is we have a 24/7 celebrity news media.
Today, there are about 6 major companies that control 90% of everything that we listen to, everything we see, everything we read. The people at the top of those organizations said every unit in this conglomerate has to be profitable. What is the most profitable form of news? It was news about celebrity. You can take just one little piece. It's almost costless. Just blast it out through all of those outlets. It's essentially to blanket the world with information about a particular celebrity.
And is it really news when Kim Kardashian is suddenly showing her baby bump? But it is treated as news now on multiple outlets. And it's especially influencing kids and their concept of what has meaning and what matters.
Then after a while, those who are really susceptible, they think, if I could just mimic the behavior of celebrities, maybe I too could achieve, fame and wealth.
The group was getting Google Maps and Google Earth and doing surveillance on all of these people, looking at their homes with binoculars, sitting across the street.
One of the things that these people did was use things like TMZ and social media websites to get information on these celebrities they were targeting. And these kids would target their homes based on when they were out of town.
And it's something that, of course, a teenager would think of because they have such, facility with this new technology. The first time they did Paris, who they chose, these are Nick's words, they chose her because she wouldn't notice.
Paris Hilton lives in one of the most guarded, private, secured areas of Los Angeles, that there is no reason why anyone would be able to get into Paris Hilton's neighborhood.
They were getting Google Maps and Google Earth and finding out ways into Paris Hilton's gated community.
Paris would leave an extra key under a mat by her door, and they located the key under the mat.
It is shocking to anyone working on the story or reading about it or watching it on television that when they go to these homes, that the doors are unlocked.
I don't know if it was the celebrities were too trusting or they just, the celebrities felt that they were on an echelon where nothing could happen to them. And these kids exploited that.
They walked in, Nick's freaking out. Rachel says, this is all according to Nick, it's fine, it's fine. They find the incredible closets. Rachel just takes a few things, just like a dress and I think a brassiere, because they don't want her to notice. They go to her nightclub room, Nick takes a bottle of vodka, and they leave. They get away with it. Then they get a little bolder, and they start coming back. And they start coming back with friends. And they start hanging out a little bit. They're almost treating this house as a kind of a clubhouse.
When you look at the affidavit filed by LAPD with the list of the items taken, not everything on the list has value. You're talking about cigarettes from Paris Hilton's house. What would be the reason to steal cigarettes from Paris Hilton's house? And I can tell you, it has to do with, I am smoking a Marlboro Light that was from the pack she smoked.
They would feel what it was like to be Paris. And this is when you have to wonder, Are these just burglaries? Or is it something else?
Just as in the past, in religion, you wanted to touch the holy shroud, to wear some object that connects us to that person. Actually, some garment that the star was wearing pulls you into that star's aura, makes you a kind of doppelganger of that star.
Roy Lopez was a bouncer at the Sagebrush Cantina, which is a bar restaurant in Calabasas where Courtney Ames worked as a waitress. And allegedly in December of 2008, Roy Lopez went on his own and took over $2 million of Paris's jewelry. Johnny Ajar was the Bling Ring's fence. He took stolen goods from them with the idea that he would sell them.
I believe Johnny Dangerous had already been arrested for having 500 grams of cocaine and 35 pounds of marijuana. This guy knew the drill. Johnny Ajar and Roy Lopez are people that once this started to happen and they started getting things that were worth money, that's when they're like, okay, how can we get rid of some of it?
Rachel loved to watch The Hills with Audrina Patridge because she loved the fashion on the hills. Audrina Patridge had this kind of very Southern California girl look that Rachel really emulated, and she wanted Audrina's clothes. It happened to be Oscar night, so the kids assumed that she would be away at a party they had seen on some celebrity website. They go into her house in the Hollywood Hills. She and Nick approach the front door. The surveillance video is looking down on her. She kind of tosses her hair around. She's very languid, and she almost seems to be posing. And when I watched it, what I thought to myself was, she wants Audrina Patridge to see her.
What could be better from Rachel's point of view than to actually have someone like Audrina notice her? She was before one of the faces in the crowd that would never stand out. Here she was doing something that would get their attention.
The authorities wanted to release the video of Audrina Patridge's house because it clearly showed some of the suspects going inside of her house. They felt at the time that they needed that first arrest or that big lead that they could get from the mass media putting it out.
Nick couldn't resist advertising their deeds on Facebook and social media. In fact, Nick at one point put a picture on Facebook of himself wearing a P necklace, which he had got at Paris Hilton's house. Because P for Paris, P for Prugo, and he's wearing it, and he had scrawled across the picture, Paris Hilton style, "Hey Paris, look familiar?" They would put pictures of themselves in these various items of clothing on their Facebook pages.
Fame actually is the currency of millennials and now coming up Generation Z. This was their form of showing, I have a huge amount of currency. Look, I was inside Paris Hilton's home. You can't get much closer to celebrity than that.
Alexis had been asked to leave her house by her mother for a timeout, quote unquote. So Alexis was living with Nick. And according to Nick, Alexis knew about the burglaries that he and others had been doing. And Alexis said, "I want to rob." So Rachel and Diana Tamayo met Nick and Alexis on a hill outside Orlando Bloom's house. Orlando Bloom and Miranda Kerr, the Victoria's Secret model, were elsewhere at the time.
Alexis Nyers claimed she was drunk that night, so drunk that she was essentially roped into this by the other Bling Ring members and was just stumbling everywhere and peeing and throwing up in the bushes, although the footage from Orlando Bloom's security camera doesn't show any of that.
And over the course of 3 hours, they stole a lot of Miranda Kerr's clothes. They stole her underwear. They stole Orlando Bloom's collection of rare Rolex watches. I think it was this night that Rachel told Nick Prugo for the first time, "I'm moving to Las Vegas to live with my dad for a while. I want some stuff to decorate the house." Nick was very surprised. They were tight, and she was his everything. And suddenly she just kind of tosses it off that she's moving. Now, it's interesting that Rachel's suddenly deciding to move because by now, the Audrina Patridge surveillance video had been aired on television. So it's kind of significant, I think, that Rachel's suddenly deciding to leave town. Rachel and Diana Tamayo were caught stealing makeup from Sephora that summer of 2009. So she had to come back for a court date, and she couldn't resist, it seems, one last heist. Lindsay Lohan was her fashion icon. She said her ultimate, Nick Prugo told me. So Nick, Rachel, and Diana Tamayo, one night in August of 2009, went to Lindsay's house to rob her. And one of them crawled in through the kitchen window and let the others in through the door. And Nick's description of Lindsay's house is so amazing because he describes shopping bags everywhere, just full of stuff, bags and bags of stuff. You just get this sense of someone who is constantly being gifted with things from designers and who is constantly shopping. And these girls, apparently, according to Nick, went crazy.
It's intriguing to me how similar the celebrities that the Bling Ring targets are to the Bling Ring themselves. They have the same preoccupation with objects. They have the same preoccupation with surface. They have the same preoccupation with being cool, with being trendy, with the people that they did target were the ones that they felt connected to because they were like themselves.
Lindsay and these kids had so many issues in her life that were so similar. A mother who was sort of a stage mother. That was Alexis Nyers. Courtney Ames, DUI. It really says how they were trying to steal not only their stuff, but somehow become them and become their fame.
The police got a tip about the social media where these kids were posting stuff online, talking to their friends about how successful they'd been in robbing celebrities. And within days, they had Nick Prugo in custody.
They haul him in, he won't say anything, he denies everything. But then Nick is like out there in the media. He's online, he's on TMZ as being this guy who might have done these things.
When we first broke a story about Nicholas Prugo and that he could be responsible for a burglary at Lindsay Lohan's house, we went to people connected to Lindsay Lohan and said, do you know this guy? And the answer was yes.
Lindsay Lohan testified that she actually saw Prugo out at a club one night, hovering near her area. This was shortly after she was robbed and the security camera footage went wide. And the friend of Lohan's recognized him from the security camera footage and told him to just get the hell out of there.
Nick Prugo decided to confess to police because he was anxious and depressed and nervous and his hair was falling out and he couldn't sleep.
Nick Prugo was brought into LAPD and then flipped on all the other Bling Ring members. He gave up all of his friends, including Rachel Lee, Courtney Ames, Diana Tamayo.
He told everything. He confessed to crimes they didn't even know he committed. Hollywood Station was empty the day they arrested the Bling Ring members because they had to get everybody all at once because they knew they would all tell each other that they were being arrested and stash property.
Then I came to set of Pretty Wild. There's cops everywhere. The girls are crying. They're getting thrown in cop cars. They're shutting down production. It was really insane. And we were trying to figure out what was happening. And that's when it started coming out that they were involved in the burglar bunch. And they were accused of robbing different celebrities. And this is when it was like, how the fuck did they get involved in this? I was just trying to like find the Kardashians.
Rachel Lee was in Las Vegas at the time of her arrest when all the other members of the Bling Ring were going down.
Rachel had an enormous amount of property in her house. They found Lindsay Lohan's mink coat and nude pictures of Paris Hilton. Rachel said, well, if I just give it back, won't you let me go? I mean, what's the problem? Diana Tamayo confessed while being held that she had done the Lindsay Lohan burglary. Now, her lawyer says that she confessed under duress because she was being threatened with the revelation about her undocumented status.
Did you do it?
Know what you guys were talking about.
Courtney Ames never confessed, but she told on others. When I got to the courtroom in LA when they were arraigned, it was like OJ or Lindsay. You know, it was the New York Times, the LA Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Rolling Stone was there. Everybody was there, and you have to ask yourself, why are we so fascinated by this?
We started to really see the line of fan and celebrity blur because these kids became celebrities in their own right, and not in a positive way. And I think that's what's crazy is in their minds, they thought it was positive. The fact that Lindsay is talking about Alexis, in Alexis's mind makes it great. Like, wow, we're buds, but she doesn't make the connection that Lindsay's talking about you because, you know, you stole from her. Alexis showed up to her court hearing. The e-cameras were there, and they're in the hallway putting makeup on her, her, and they're doing her hair and everything like she's going for an audition. No, she was going for an arraignment.
Alexis's world is sort of like crumbling, where like she became a criminal. She was on TMZ every day. She was going to court. So for a reality show, it became pretty interesting because you're watching this girl and this family sort of like spiral into this situation that they were not prepared for.
How was it inside?
It was terrible.
It was terrible?
Alexis was just out of her mind, just in terms of everything. I think she would like to stop, but at that point, they weren't going to.
Alexis Nyers was the first to plead out. She pled no contest for a count of burglary of Orlando Bloom's house.
Rachel Lee, who LAPD and the media coined the mastermind of the entire Bling ring, received a 4-year prison sentence.
Nick Prugo pled no contest to burglary.
Hey, Johnny, man, how did you meet these kids? Did you do it? When did you start receiving goods, man?
Officer Brett Goodkin, who was assigned to the case and who was the one who questioned Nick Prugo, got in a little hot water because he agreed to be a consultant on Sofia Coppola's film The Bling Ring, but didn't disclose this information to any of his superiors. And this was still while the case was going on.
What wound up happening is that his involvement in the movie essentially enabled the 3 remaining defendants to get off with probation. Courtney Ames pled no contest to receiving stolen property. Diana pled no contest to burglarizing Lindsay Lohan. Roy Lopez pled guilty to receiving stolen property because he had this big Louis Vuitton bag full of Paris Hilton's jewelry, which he claims he didn't steal. Larry Fidler, when he sentenced them to these incredibly light sentences, said outright to them in court, to all of them, you got lucky, and you know you got lucky because of what happened with Detective Goodkin.
Hey, Alexis, what are you gonna do while you're here? Did you bring any books or anything?
Can't bring anything, buddy.
Oh, no.
Writing your book.
Writing the book, okay. Are you nervous at all? Scared?
Going to jail.
Yeah. What about the show? Is the show gonna have to go on hiatus or any news about that?
We're on hiatus.
You're gonna be coming back when you're done or while you're in there?
Andy Warhol's famous remark about in the future everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. It was great insight, but I would add to it as a corollary, you won't know which 15 minutes it will be. It might be 15 minutes that you're totally ashamed of.
So why did they do it? I think it's everything from how they were living at home to how we are living in our culture. I think that their crime and what it represents is almost bigger than them. What they did is the story.